Sister secretly reported us to CPS after a drunk Christmas, and now our family is shattered by her betrayal. My sister and I have always shared an incredibly close bond. Every year, she and her fiancé Cam31 come over on Christmas Eve and spend the night with us, helping me and my family get all the toys from Santa built and set up for the kids. We dubbed ourselves Santa's helpers, and genuinely made it a tradition full of laughter, inside jokes, and late-night antics. This Christmas was no different, or so I thought. That night, she was here like always, and saw firsthand how my husband and father handled disciplining our son M13. My son has recently entered his teen rebel era, choosing to ignore us when we ask him to do things, pretending he doesn't know how to accomplish simple tasks, slamming doors, and generally exhibiting all the delightful sass of a new teenager. His teachers at school have noticed the attitude too, so my husband and I have been trying to nip it in the bud at home. Our approach is a blend of stern love with plenty of talking it out. Every time a conflict erupts and our son storms upstairs, slamming his door, my husband gives him 10 minutes to cool down and then heads up for a frank, open-hearted conversation. On Christmas Eve, as the family was together, my son blurted to his 3-year-old sister that Santa wasn't real. Both my husband and I immediately stopped him. That wasn't okay, and he knew it. Of course, the argument then door slam routine played out. This time, though, my sister and her fiancé had front row seats to the family dynamics. They watched but didn't say a word, just slipped back into our Christmas Eve traditions. Eventually, my son apologized, went off to bed, and I assumed the worst was behind us. But when my son returned to school after winter break, things took a shocking turn. A CPS worker appeared at his school to pull him out of class and interview him about life at home and how we treated him. He told them that he loved us, that things were fine, that, yes, grounding and losing electronics was a thing when he misbehaved, but he knew we disciplined him because we loved him and wanted him to do better. December had already been brutal for me. Out of nowhere, I had 3 seizures, back to back, despite being seizure-free for a decade. I was in my neurologist's waiting room, preparing for an EEG sleep study, when I got a voicemail from that same CPS worker announcing she would be at my home the next day to interview us and our 3-year-old daughter. My anxiety was through the roof. I immediately forwarded her number and voicemail to my husband because I simply couldn't handle it in that moment. He stepped up and called her back. The very next day, completely exhausted from medical testing, I had to open our home to a CPS investigation. As soon as the worker arrived, her questions revealed the nature of the accusations made against us. She claimed my husband was an alcoholic with anger issues and that we were starving our 3 children with no food in the house. The first accusation baffled me. It was Christmas Eve. The whole family had been drinking some eggnog and maybe a bit of wine. My sister, however, went above and beyond with the festivities, managing to polish off an entire 18-pack of beer by herself. My husband doesn't have any sort of drinking problem, nor does he have anger issues. Yes, we were upset with what our son said to his little sister, but nothing remotely close to a situation where anyone could be accused of anger management problems. To clear up the second accusation, during the worker's inspection, I showed her our kitchen. She laughed outright. There's enough food here to feed everyone in this house for 3 months. There was absolutely no question that my children were well cared for and far from starving. As she finished, the worker told us, "I'm grateful to be handling a case in a functional home with happy, healthy kids. Usually, it's quite the opposite." Today, she called us to officially close the case. No further action needed. We were in the clear, but the damage done to my sense of security and family trust was enormous. After all of this, conversations with my parents and brother led everyone to the same conclusion: my sister was the one who reported us. She hasn't outright admitted it, but all signs point to her. She was over-the-top communicative the very day of the CPS interview, texting and calling, utterly demanding to know how it went. Then, the moment I told her that everything went fine, she went radio silent and hasn't spoken to me in weeks. She knows I suspect her, and I believe she knows I've figured it out. I feel shattered by this betrayal. I trusted her completely, and to think she could do something so impulsive, dishonest, and frankly cruel is almost too much to process. After all I've been through recently, my health struggles, needing to completely rearrange our lives because I can't drive for 6 months and therefore can't work, the idea that my own sister could turn on me like this is devastating. I have spent sleepless nights strategizing how to confront her. Part of me wants to explode, but I don't want to let emotion rule the conversation. Nonetheless, she needs to understand how wrong this was and how deeply she hurt not just me, but my entire family. I want to make it clear, she is not welcome at my son's birthday next week, and she will not be welcome in my home for a long time. My parents haven't given her hell yet. They're trying to coax a confession out of her, gathering whatever information they can while she remains silent with me. I plan to go no contact, at least for a while. It saddens me to say this, but my sister has become increasingly unstable as the years have gone by, and it feels like I've finally lost her. This betrayal isn't something she can come back from, at least not without a tremendous amount of time, distance, and true change on her part. I want to confront her and say outright that I know what she did. She put my kids at serious risk with completely baseless accusations, and she has no place in our lives right now. Finding out it was her wasn't something CPS told me, it was everything else: the timing, her behavior, her increasingly erratic actions, and how all the dots lined up. The person who once felt like my closest ally instead became the source of the deepest betrayal I've ever experienced. Update 1. My brother wants to coordinate a lunch where we can all sit down together and talk about everything. He doesn't think it's a good idea for me to just text her, and maybe he's right. Still, I'm honestly not sure if I'll even be able to look her in the eye right now. I feel like there are so many emotions swirling around inside me: frustration and confusion most of all. When this conversation finally happens, I'm determined to bring up her drinking. It's gone far enough that I can't ignore it anymore, especially with how it seems to connect to everything else that's been unraveling. I also need to talk about the concerns I have for her mental health. It's weighing on me, the thought that things are worse than any of us realized. But more than anything, I want to get to the truth. As hard as it feels to sit down and have this kind of confrontation, I owe it to myself, my family, and honestly, to her. I just hope I can find the right words when the time comes. Update. Hugh. She ended up reaching out to me, pouring her heart out and telling me how much she loved me. All I could do was respond honestly. I told her I had a question for her, and I needed her to be truthful. She called immediately, her voice tight with anticipation. She didn't even wait for me to ask, she just launched in, "I think you already know the answer if you're asking this question, so yes, it was me." Hearing her admit it, so bluntly, sent a chill right through me. Even though I knew deep down it was her, even though I'd been bracing for it, actually hearing her say those words was almost too much to bear. I tried to hold it together and followed up, asking, "Do you realize what could have happened to my kids? To me and my husband? Do you realize how bad the outcome of this could have been?" Suddenly, she exploded, ranting, yelling, and going off on a tirade. According to her, my husband and I didn't deserve to be parents. She even shouted that I obviously don't care about my children since, in her warped view, I hadn't brought them up, which was ridiculous because I literally began our conversation asking if she realized what could have happened to my kids. I'm pretty sure she was drunk during this call. Her words tumbled over each other, almost incoherent at times. I couldn't get in a single word. I kept trying, asking if I could speak, desperate to have some kind of real conversation, but she just ranted over me. The only thing she actually heard from me was, "You realize we are going to be taking a very long break from you, right?" She shot back, "I'm sure you will, and I don't care," and just kept ranting. Her words became more and more erratic, something about how she claims she cares for my kids more than anyone else. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If this was her way of showing she cared, by putting my kids at risk, breaking up our family and being proud about it, then I didn't want any part of it. Again, I tried to regain some control. I told her, as calmly as I could, that if she wouldn't let me speak, I was going to hang up. But it did no good. Her voice just got louder and more incoherent. That was the end, my last attempt. I hung up and blocked her immediately, and then, with my heart pounding, I called our father. I told him everything, that she sounded horribly unstable, either drunk, having a manic episode, or both. I begged him to try to reach out and calm her down, to get through to her somehow before things got even worse. I don't know if he managed to get through, but I hope he did. I've felt devastated and numb ever since. Knowing it was her, having that suspicion confirmed, it broke something inside me. The way she admitted it, so indignant, almost proud, then spiraled out in an unhinged rant, made it worse, and I knew I'd lost my sister for good. I could hear in my dad's voice how much he didn't want to believe it was true. The moment I told him she had admitted it, his entire tone changed. He sounded so close to tears. I can't even blame him. She just drove a wedge right through our family. I didn't even get a chance to address all the hurtful accusations. I wanted to ask her where she got the insane idea that we were starving our children, when she's never left our house hungry, and neither have the kids. I wanted to confront her about the drunken anger issues, because clearly, she's the one with that problem. But she never gave me the chance. This is truly the end of the line for me. I feel nothing but heartbreak and numbness today, and I can only hope that, after speaking with my dad, she won't try to retaliate. But I'm on edge, and really all I want now is peace, just to move on and heal from the damage she caused. Betrayal isn't even a strong enough word for what I feel. Update 3. I thought the quiet after blocking her would give me room to breathe. It didn't. 2 days later, the school counselor called me mid-morning and said they'd received an anonymous email claiming my son shows up malnourished and terrified and begging them to check him for bruises. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. She was compassionate and careful. She knows my son and knows our family, but she's a mandated reporter and had to say the words out loud about following protocol. When I hung up, I called the CPS worker from our case, as she already knew. She told me there was a second anonymous report that morning, nearly word for word the same as the first with a few new embellishments about my husband hiding empty liquor bottles in the attic. She said it straight, I can't tell you anything about the reporter, but we're aware there may be a pattern of harassment. We are not opening a new investigation based on this. I cried into a dish towel like a child, standing in my own kitchen, because it was like being trapped in a story I didn't write. That afternoon, her fiancé reached out from a number I didn't recognize. His text was short, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to do. He asked if he could call. I said yes. His voice sounded shredded, like he hadn't slept in days. He told me he moved out that morning. He said the last straw was her on the couch with a beer at 9 a.m. Laughing while she typed, let's see if the school listens this time, and then showing him the send button like it was a party trick. He said it hasn't just been drinking, that there's this intensity to her, a mission, like she wakes up every day collecting evidence to prove we're monsters. He apologized for not telling me sooner that she's been spiraling for a while. And then he said the thing that made my hands go cold, I recorded her the night she called. I wanted to have proof, in case she tried to flip the story on me. Do you want it? He sent me a voice memo, 35 seconds long. It's her voice, unmistakable, and I could hear ice clinking in a glass in the background and that performative tone she puts on when she wants to be believed by strangers. She was telling the intake worker that she feared for the children's lives and that we lock them in rooms when they cry. I felt something twist inside me that I don't have a name for. He also texted screenshots her bragging about being 242 when the school called my son in last week, and a note she sent herself with my son's birthday circled and a word show up and prove it underneath. We had already decided that his birthday would be just us and my parents and brother, low-key, homemade cake, a few of his friends for video games later. After those messages, we told everyone to come early, park down the street, and keep their phones on loud. My dad looked like I've never seen him look when he walked in 10 years older overnight, just dim. He hugged my son so hard my son laughed and said, "Dad, you're breaking Grandpa." We lit candles. We sang. And then the side gate rattled. She didn't knock. She pushed the gate until it banged on the latch and then came around to the back deck, eyes glassy and bright, hair twisted back like she was there to deliver a sermon. I moved without thinking, stepped between her and the sliding door. My husband was already on the phone. My brother put himself in front of my tab because I could feel his anger from where I stood, like heat off asphalt. She started and immediately, loud enough that the neighbors popped their heads over the fence. "I'm here for them," she said, pointing at my kids like they were objects on a shelf. "You can't keep me from them. Everyone is going to know what you do in this house." I told her to leave. I told her we had asked her not to come, that she wasn't welcome here. She laughed in my face. "Of course I'm welcome. This is family." Then, to my son through the glass, all saccharine voice, "Baby, are you okay? Blink twice if you need help." My son stood up, all shoulders and bravery, and closed the curtains himself. When I tell you he looked like a man for a second, it hit me so hard I almost lost my footing. The police showed up in under 5 minutes. Our neighbor across the street used to be a dispatcher. She must have called when she heard the gate. The officers were calm and direct. They told her she was trespassing and needed to leave immediately. She tried to argue, pointing to my dad and yelling, Tell them what you told me about him when he was little." My dad, God bless him, said, "No," with such finality it actually shut her up for a heartbeat. Then she went back to shouting about saving the children and proof. One of the officers asked if we wanted a formal trespass notice issued. We said yes. They explained it clearly to her if she set foot on our property again, she'd be arrested. She finally backed down the steps, still talking, still promising she'd be back with someone who would listen. The officer looked at me and said quietly, "Document everything." When the gate clicked shut behind them, the house just exhaled. My son sat back down and said, very earnestly, "Can we still do presents?" And in some miracle of a moment, we did. We cut cake with police lights painting the fence blue and red. I watched my dad try not to shake while he handed my son an envelope with tickets to a game they've been talking about for months. It felt like defiance in the smallest, bravest way to make this normal moment survive. The next morning, I filed for a temporary restraining order. I took the voice memo, the screenshots, the police incident number, and printed out the email the school forwarded to me with the anonymous allegations, redactions and all. The judge signed the same day, effective immediately, with a court date in 2 weeks for a full hearing. The clerk told me they'd serve her. 30 minutes later, my dad called from his car. He had tried to go to her place to talk one last time and saw the process server leaving as he pulled up. He said she screamed through the door at him that we were conspiring with the courts and that she would bring the media if that's what it took. He didn't even try to answer. He just said, "I love you. We're done here," and came back to my house and held my daughter while she watched cartoons. Her fiancé texted me again that night with a picture of a plastic bin full of our grandmother's Christmas ornaments. Apparently my sister had taken them when we moved 2 years ago and swore she didn't know where they went. He left them on my porch with a note, "I'm sorry I didn't stop this sooner. Please keep your doors locked." He also told me she hasn't been at work for a week and that she called his new job pretending to be his sister to warn them that he was an abuser because he wouldn't give her his spare car key. It's like she's setting every bridge on fire just to watch the shapes in the smoke. At bedtime, my son asked if we could move his drum set from the garage to his room for a little while. He said it felt safer. I said yes. He carried the snare up the stairs himself and then came back down and hugged me around the middle the way he used to when he was 10. "I'm not scared of her," he said into my shirt. "I'm just mad she made you cry on my birthday." That was the part that finished me. I don't know where this ends. I know where my line is now. I saw it, drawn hard on my own back steps. I didn't think I would ever be the person saying the words restraining order about my own sister, not in a million surreal Christmas Eves. But here we are. The weirdest part is how quiet the house feels when the kids are asleep and I can't hear my own footsteps in the hall. Peace isn't dramatic. It's soft. It's the opposite of whatever she's chasing. And I'm choosing it, even if it means choosing it without her. Update 4. Court felt like a bus station for people's worst days. Fluorescent lights, carpet that had lost its color somewhere around 2009, and the kind of quiet where everyone is whispering and somehow it's still loud. I brought a binder I made at 2 a.m. Because sleep wouldn't come. Screenshots and the police report and the email from the school and that voice memo burned onto a little USB. My hand shook hard enough that the metal rings clicked together when I opened it. She was late. Of course she was. When she finally came through the metal detector, she was wearing white from head to toe, like she was about to do a baptism in the hallway. She had a shoebox tucked under one arm and a reusable grocery bag under the other. I watched her put the shoebox down carefully on the bench like it contained a heart. She saw me. She smiled. It was the smile she uses when she lies and wants the lie to land soft. The bailiff didn't even let her get close. "You can't speak to her," he said, big voice in that skinny hallway. She rolled her eyes at him like he was a clerk bagging her bread wrong. Inside, the judge didn't waste time. He had the look of someone who already knew which forms we all were before we opened our mouths. My name. Her name. He explained how this would go like he'd explained it 19 times already that morning. I said my piece. It didn't come out as neatly as I practiced in my car, but I got the bones down. I told him about the calls and the emails and the birthday and the gate and the neighbors pretending not to eavesdrop over the fence while the police put blue and red on my lemon tree. When I said I had a recording, his eyebrows moved for the first time. The clerk took the USB like it was handoff in a relay. We all listened together to my sister's voice in that flat public sound kind of way, the eyes clink, the words fear for their lives, the lie about locks. You could have spread a picnic on the silence that followed. Then it was her turn. She started with, "Your Honor, as a woman, which, okay." She opened the shoebox like a magician about to produce a dove. It was kids' art, my son's old drawings she must have stuck in her purse over the years, my daughter's finger paintings, a Christmas list from 2 years ago with drumsticks written like a secret. She held one up like a smoking gun. "He wrote this when he was sad," she said. "He wrote this when they punished him." The judge put his reading glasses on and finally said, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to connect these items to an actual allegation of abuse." She tried to give him a photo of my son's shin with a purple oval from soccer. I had the pediatrician portal printout in my binder, black and white and clinical and exactly what it needed to be. She tried to talk about our childhood and the time my dad forgot to pick me up from choir. The judge held up his hand and told her if she brought up anything from before last month again, he'd end her testimony. It spiraled anyway. She said the word conspiracy like it was a B on a rosary. She called my husband the drunk into a microphone that made her S's sound like knives. She said my dad had told her everything, and when the judge asked, "Everything what?" she said, "He knows," and pointed a finger straight at my father sitting 2 rows behind me. My dad's face didn't move. I felt him not moving, like gravity in the back of my head. They don't announce decisions like in movies. He just said the words. 1 year. No contact. No coming to the school or my work or my parents' house. No third-party messages. He told her she could retrieve any of her property from our place through law enforcement only, with 48 hours notice, if there was anything she thought she was owed. He looked at me and told me to keep documenting. Then he looked at her and said, "If you violate this order, I promise you will not like the next part." He asked her if she understood. She said, very sweetly, "Of course, Your Honor," and then as soon as he looked down she muttered something I didn't catch except for the word fascists. The bailiff looked right at her until she closed her mouth. I didn't know relief could feel like paperwork. The clerk stamped the copy and slid it across to me, and it was like somebody handed me a towel after I'd been standing in the rain for a month. We made it to the parking lot without her trying anything. I sat in my car and shook and then laughed at myself for shaking, and then cried while the heat clicked in that tinny way it does when old cars decide they'll be generous this once. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A picture of a flyer taped to a stop sign around the corner from my house. "Are these children safe?" With a blurred screenshot from a video of my kids playing in the kiddie pool last summer, the one I posted for our 3 relatives who live out of state. She'd pulled it, cropped it, blown it out. My neighbor sent the picture, and then, 3 minutes later, another picture of the same stop sign naked again. "Got it," she wrote. "Going hunting." By the time I got home, the only proof was a little square of torn tape flapping sadly in the breeze. I called non-emergency and added it to the pile: name, days, time, the whole spelling bee of it. We had 24 hours of quiet. 24 hours where the loudest thing was my son practicing buzz rolls and my daughter making her doll's kiss with exaggerated smacking noises. Then DoorDash rang the bell at 9 p.m. 2 brown bags, heavy. The driver looked relieved when I opened the door. "No tip," he said, apologetic, and then, "Weird no." On the receipt, in the space where people write "no onions," she had written, "Feed them tonight at least." I made myself laugh because if I didn't I'd grind my own teeth down to chalk. I asked the driver to wait a second and I took a picture of the order number and the note and the time before I dumped the whole thing into the trash can with the broken luggage we still haven't decided whether to fix. The officer who'd come to my son's birthday called me back fast. He told me that counted. He told me to hold on to the receipt. "She is not clever," he said, not unkindly. "But she is persistent." He called her. He called me back. "She hung up on me," he said, sounding almost entertained. "But we documented. If there's a second one, we'll push it to the DA." The second one wasn't food. The second one was her in the lobby at my son's school the next morning, holding a tote bag of manila folders and trying to breeze past the secretary like she worked there. The secretary is 5'2" and an absolute tyrant in the way the best elementary school secretaries are. She planted both palms on the counter and said, "No." When my sister tried to read her a speech about educational neglect, the secretary called the SRO so calmly you would have thought she was ordering lunch. Violation. Documented. The SRO called me and said, "We have your order on file. We're escorting her off property now." My son texted me from the bathroom, "I'm fine." He put a period at the end like he's been practicing for a grammar quiz. I cried in the grocery store aisle in front of the Parmesan, again, because that seems to be my designated crying aisle now. At 4 p.m. My dad called and I didn't recognize his voice for a second. He said he was at the hospital. He said they called him because he's listed as her emergency contact. He said she's on a hold. He didn't know the proper name for it and neither do I, not in our state, but it means 72 hours and people with gentle shoes checking every 15 minutes and a door that clicks the way a serious door clicks. He said she'd shown up at her old job and pulled the fire alarm and then told the building manager she had evidence there were child trafficking codes in the evacuation map. Someone called 911 and when the officers got there she told them I'd put a tracker in her molar. She said your name into the air, my dad said. Like an answer to everything. He sounded like someone who'd set down a sack of stones and only then realized how long he'd been carrying them. I sat at the edge of my bed and looked at the laundry I'd been folding and lost track of whatever rules I have for what counts as a towel versus what counts as a shirt. I thought I would feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt emptied out. I asked my dad if she seemed scared. He said yes. I asked if she seemed drunk. He said no. He said she looked strung. He said she told the intake nurse that God had given her a job and we were all failing the test. He said, she asked me if I would testify against you, and then he had to stop and breathe, one long inhale, before he could say, I told her no. Her ex-fiancé texted me from the parking lot and said he was there too, with his hands shoved under his thighs in the waiting room so he wouldn't chew his nails to blood. He said he had printed out the restraining order to give them so they'd know the boundaries when she got out. He said he told them he was scared of her, too. He sent a picture of a bulletin board with a flyer pinned to it about an outpatient program, bright colors like it was summer camp. He wrote, maybe this is the first time anyone can reach her. I wanted to believe him. I want to believe him. But I also live in my house with my babies and my husband and my little stack of forms that make my hands stop shaking. The school counselor called me in the evening just to say she was thinking of us. She told me my son asked if he could eat his lunch in her office today, not because he was upset but because he liked the lamp in there. She told me that when a kid chooses a lamp over the cafeteria, it's usually because the lamp feels like a lighthouse. I picturing him there, legs swinging, shooing, nodding like a person on a talk show. It steadied me in a way I didn't expect. When the house got quiet, I went into my son's room. The drums are set up now under the window. He'd put one of my grandmother's ornaments, the silver bird with a clipped wing, on his bookshelf next to an old soccer trophy. He said he wanted old family things near him. He looked up when I stood there in the doorway and said, do you think she'll stop? I told him the only true thing I had. I said, we made it so she has to. He nodded like I'd given him math he could finally solve. Before bed I opened the binder and put the day into it, page protector sliding with that plastic sigh. I didn't think I'd ever be the person who slept better because there's a paper cage around my life that says where someone else can't go. But I slept. The house was soft again. Peace kept showing up in boring places: the click of the dishwasher, the exact way my daughter's hair smells like strawberries and penis, the scratch of a drumstick against a practice pad through a closed door. For the first time in months, I closed my own eyes and didn't feel like I had to hold my family up with them. Update 5. 71 hours into the 72, my dad called from a hospital hallway that sounded like tile. He said the social worker wanted a family meeting before discharge. I told him the only meeting I attend with her now wears a black robe and has a bailiff who looks bored on purpose. He understood. He took the restraining order to them like a permission slip and told them I would not be in any room with her. He said the social worker nodded the way people nod when a puzzle clicks into place and asked if he'd be willing to be her point of contact when she left. He said yes. He also said she asked for it, the children, like she was requesting a library book. He told her no. He told me she didn't even flinch, like the word no was just background noise. That afternoon a letter from CPS King, the real kind, with a window envelope and my name looking too official. Unfounded. I read that word 4 times until it stopped swimming. There was a line about screening future reports and a line about malicious reporting that felt like a paragraph standing up for me. I slid it into the front of the binder like a passport you check with your fingertips every 5 minutes just to make sure it's still there. Her ex-fiancé called me from the parking lot again. He said he thought she had a storage unit because he found a bill wedged in the water heater closet when he moved out. I told him to tell the police, not me, not to touch it. He did. A detective rang my phone later and asked for the recording and screenshots again, and then asked if I knew why my sister had printed 200 screenshots of our Instagram from the last 5 years and highlighted any photo where a plate of food looked too beige. I didn't, but of course I did because that's exactly the shape of the thing she's been chasing, a ghost cold proof that looks like whatever the light hits wrong. They discharged her on a Thursday morning. My dad said he could hear her shoes coming before he could see her. He was standing under a framed poster about coping skills. She told him God had given her 3 signs: 1 dove, 1 number, 1 cloud, and that meant she was supposed to go to the school again. He told her she couldn't. He said he used the word illegal very carefully, like he'd taken it out of a glass case. She told him the order didn't apply to truth-telling. The police were already there. The detective with a patient voice met her outside, and my dad said the look on her face when she saw him was not surprise, it was irritation, like he'd interrupted a song she liked. They served her on the prior violation and the school trespass. She didn't get cuffed in front of him. He was grateful for that scrap of dignity for reasons I both understand and don't anymore. He watched her get into the back of a car with the cage between the seats and called me from his own driver's seat. He cried once, one sound, and then swallowed. He said, "It's moving somewhere now," like the worst part had been the stuckness. The school called me to tell me there's a do not release to note on file with her name underlined so many times it looked like a barcode. The secretary with tyrant energy met my eyes over the counter and said, We're good, and I believed her in my bones. The SRO sent me a 2-sentence email that somehow sounded like a hand on my shoulder anyway: charges filed, order updated on our end. I thought that would be the plot for the day. It wasn't. At 2, a white sedan idled at the end of our block with a magnet on the door that looked like a local station logo until you got close enough to see the font was wrong. My neighbor across from us texted a picture before I even saw it and then sent another of the car driving away when no one came to knock. She'd tipped them and they'd come fishing. Or she'd made a magnet and played news at her own life. Either way, the driveway stayed empty, and we still had to figure out dinner, and my daughter's hair still smelled like strawberries and pennies when I bent down to tie her shoes. That night the detective called back and asked if I could come down in the morning to give a statement for the harassment case so that I had my voice on paper and not just my screenshots. He said the storage unit had 3 boxes of documentation with my kids' names on the sides in marker and 1 old lunchbox with a spiral notebook inside where she'd written observations in loops like a teenager, times and dates and no vegetables visible. He said he couldn't give me anything, but he wanted me to know he had it. I thanked him, which felt like such a small word to point at the relief of a grown-up room existing somewhere with grown-up laws that someone else had to enforce. Friday morning, the band room at my son's school smelled like spit valves and carpet cleaner. He has sectional before first period, and I stood in the doorway longer than any other mom because sometimes it helps to watch your kid do a thing you don't know how to do. He did paradiddles and looked serious in that way kids look when they finally meet their own attention and like it. My phone buzzed on silent. The SRO again. She was arraigned. No contact condition stayed. Ordered to outpatient after release. Next date on the calendar. You're good. I put the phone in my back pocket and watched my son's shoulders relax around a rhythm he'd been fighting with all week. When he caught me watching, he gave me this tiny private grin that broke me a little and then put me back together in the same breath. She didn't stop. Of course she didn't. She just changed rooms. Saturday morning, flyers ballooned on 3 more blocks. Not the stop sign this time. Bus benches. Telephone poles. Protect our kids. She used a photo of my daughter from the side because my daughter's braid made a good shape to scare strangers with. I knew in our neighborhood Facebook group was a hydra I refused to feed. People took the papers down and slid them under my mat like they were returning borrowed dishes. I took pictures of every single one before I threw them away. The pile in the binder thickened until the rings protested and I had to open a second one. Fake were cages breeding. My mom finally filed for her own order. She did it on a Sunday night after my sister stood in her driveway and screamed for 7 minutes exactly, timing it on her phone, to document how long it takes for you people to admit anything. I know the minutes because my mom texted me a video she didn't mean to take and I watched the little white numbers climb while the camera pointed at her hibiscus. My mom brought me my grandmother's brooch wrapped in tissue when she left the courthouse. She said something about women in our family not being very good at quitting each other and then clipped the brooch to my coat herself with fingers that have buttoned me into every costume I've ever worn. She whispered, "We can be good at it now." It wasn't poetry, but it landed like something sacred anyway. Monday there was a new letter, not from wth.reddit this time but from the clerk's office with a date and a time and a courtroom for the case with her name versus the state. I put it in the second binder under a tab I labeled stupid calendar in Sharpie because sometimes being petty to paper is all you get. The hospital called my dad and asked if anyone would be willing to participate in a family session for her outpatient. He told them about the order. He told them he'd meet in a room without her anytime they wanted to hear about the person who existed before this mission ate her whole. He asked me if there was anything I wanted him to say. I wrote a paragraph on a yellow post-it and stuck it to his dashboard when he stopped by. It said, "I believe she is sick. I also believe she is dangerous to my family. Both can be true." He read it one time out loud and then folded it like a letter and put it in his wallet. 2 hours later, the school counselor called just to tell me that my son asked if they could start a drumline next semester and she said she'd take it to the principal. She said he looked proud when he asked. She said sometimes kids try confidence on like a jacket and you can see instantly if it fits. I sat in the car outside the grocery store again, different aisle, same stupid crying, and thought about the sound he's been building in his room, steady and big and bigger than he is when he's mad or scared. Like he's practicing a heartbeat for our house. We haven't seen her since the arraignment. The neighborhood is finally free of tape. The bands of quiet in our day are widening. It's not over. I know that the same way I know when my daughter is about to ask for water right after I've turned out her light. But something shifted. The heat kicks on, clicks the way it always does, the dishwasher sighs, the binder closes with a small firm sound, and I can't feel the floor under my feet without checking for cracks first. Last night my son moved the snare next to the window and did soft rolls and till the cat fell asleep on the rug. He looked at me and said, "Do you want to learn one?" and handed me a stick. He counted me in like I was a person who could follow. I tapped the pad and missed and then found it, and for a minute my house was only wood against rubber and the way a boy turns into a man in front of you, not because he is to but because he wants to learn the rhythm that keeps people he loves upright. He's is still quiet. It's still not dramatic. But I can't hear it better now. And for the first time in a long time, it sounds like home.